So I think you guys already know, like font family, you have it there. You can change like what font you want to use for particular text, right? Let's cover text decoration. That probably is a bit more fun. Because at first when I came across text decoration, I wondered myself too, like, what was that used for? So here I have text decoration underlined, right? Targeted on the anchor tag. If I comment that out, oh, wait, no, I didn't mean to comment that out. I think it's not. So what's anchor tag? You guys remember? What is it for? Link, right? So on the page we have two links here. You see, text decoration can be used to tell the browser, hey, you know, for example, you might not want those two links to have underlines, right? You can tell the browser, hey, I don't want them to have underlines. I'm not advocating that you use that style, right? Because it can confuse people. I mean, most of the time when you see a link, you expect them to have like an underline, right? But anyway, suppose that you don't want the links to have underlines. Then you can use CSS text decoration to tell the browser, hey, I don't want underlines. So I just changed the styling, but you can see that when I hover over it, I get that little hand that I can click on. It's still a link. We just changed the presentation. So to make that happen, all I had to do was I target in CSS. I just tell it, hey, don't decorate the text. Okay. Now, if I want to have the underline back, I simply would just have underline it. So I save the file, refresh the page, and then the underline is back. So again, I'm just showing you an example of how you can use CSS to alter the looks of your page. Okay. Margin left 50px. What that really does is this. So if I were to take this out, okay, and I refresh the page, just watch carefully. You see how the text is shifted to the left? Essentially, the margin left for CSS, it allows you to specify the margin of your document. I applied it to body, so this is applied to the entire document. When you put it back in, then as you saw before, the entire document is shifted to the right. 50 pixels. So I forgot to mention, so 50px stands for 50 pixels. Pixels is like a square. So like when you see a screen, it has resolution, right? Maybe 1024 by 768. That's what we mean by pixels. Like the screen is actually composed of a bunch of like squares, cells. Yeah. Don't have to worry about it. It's not on the exam. Okay, so this is a very important part of the lecture. I want you guys to understand this part well, because this is how, when HTML and CSS, when they interact, this is how they interact through the concept of ID and class. I'm just going to show you an example. We're going to demonstrate what's meant by ID and class through an example. So if you remember from before, I described my copies. One of the text is red, right? The font color is red. How did I do that? How did I specify like just the color red to a specific list item? You can do that using, for example, ID. So how did I do that? I'll show you the code and then see how we do that. So first of all, when you have a tag, any tags, I think, any tags in HTML, any HTML tags can have an attribute called ID. An ID is like the Thai ID, you know, the Thai ID. It's a unique number, right? Everyone has a unique Thai ID number, right? Same thing with the concept of ID. In any given page, you can only have a single ID identifier. By that I mean, I don't mean that you can only have one tag that can have the attribute ID. I don't mean that. I just mean that on this whole page, you can only have one ID called my favorite, for example. You can certainly have in this case, we have two IDs on the page now, but you can have, but the ID identifiers are different. It is a big no-no to have something like this. Even though you can do it, you're able to, but you should, you actually are not, this is not a valid HTML document, okay? So what's the takeaway from this is that, first of all, you can have many IDs on your page, but just ensure that you don't have identical ID identifiers. So something like this, you cannot have. So what can you do with when you have, like when you give a tag an ID, like my favorite, right? So in CSS, if you remember, on the browser, this is red, right? So what I did was in CSS, I have my favorite right here. I target that specific tag to have color red, okay? And how it ties into each other is that whenever you want to target a tag that has an ID, you would use a pound sign, like here, right? If I didn't have the pound sign, let's say like that, and then I go back to the page, then that style, the color red, would not be applied to the tag, to that tag anymore. So again, going back, if you have a tag that has an attribute ID, if you want to target it using CSS, you need to use the pound sign.
What do you call it?
Which one?
Square.
Oh, a pound sign. Yeah, pound sign. Pound. It's the same symbol that's on your phone too. You know the pound sign?
Yeah, I call it the square sign.
Oh, okay, square sign. No, too. So is that clear? So just to really recap, I have right that I assign an ID to it called my favorite, and if I want to target it using CSS, in my CSS section, I would refer to that my favorite identifier, but I have to prefix it with a pound sign or a square sign, and then you can apply any kind of styling to that particular tag. Okay. Now, that's not all there is to it. There's also what we call class. So we talk about ID, right? There's also class. So what is class and how can it be useful? So going back to this example, the things that I need to do today, you'll notice that there are 3 items that are styled differently. By that I mean the color is green, right? The item 1, 2, and 4, they're green. How did I do that? I certainly cannot use ID, right? Because remember, you can only have one ID, like, you can only have one ID with the same identifier. Like, you cannot do this, right? Like, if I wanted to apply the styling to both of these as, let's say, red, I cannot have IDs, right? Because they would have the same identifier, so you can't do that. So this is why I guess the people who created the HTML technology came up with class. The concept of class is exactly the same thing as ID, except that on the same page, you can have multiple elements that have the same class. In this case, I have 3 list items with a class of green items. And as you can already guess, I apply the font color to be green for these 3 items. Don't confuse this word class with Java class, okay? It's totally different. Just remember the difference between ID and class is that for class, you apply it to number of tags, okay? But when you have ID, you apply it to only a single tag. Is that clear? Yeah? So just to make this complete, down here, okay, I totally forgot. So I mentioned before that when you're dealing with ID,
when we talk about class and ID, are they comparable to the concept of a class? The class keyword here is a class in object-oriented programming, and ID is for identifying objects of that class. Well, obviously there's no relationship between class and ID, but when you think about class and ID as class mean groups of similar things that should have the same behaviors and have the same look. And then ID is like a unique item in the document.
Yes, certainly we can think of it like that as well. An ID is a unique item that you have in your collection, and then you have a bunch of class that have, I guess, many objects that you instantiate. Yes. So we talked about how we use the pound sign, right? The pound sign on line 83. The prefix then one indicates that you're targeting an ID, right? How do you target a class, a CSS class? You would use a dot to target a class. So if you remember, actually, hold on. Okay. Another cool thing about Vim is that you can split the screen. A single file, a single text editor, you can actually have multiple views. So what I'm saying is that the top one and the bottom one, they're the same file. But I'm just looking at different sections. I hope that's not sarcastic. Okay, so this makes it a little bit easier, at least for me, to show you what we're trying to do. So you see, we have ID that goes with the pound key, the pound sign, and then dot go with class. So is it clear now how you would specify in HTML ID and class, and then how you would specify or you would target ID and class in CSS? This is why I have the ID lined up with the pound sign, and class lined up with the dot sign. HTML is you express it through ID and class, and in CSS you express it through the pound and dot sign. Yeah? We good? Yeah? Okay. I think we've covered quite enough in terms of the styling. Just real quickly, so like let's say you can have a CSS attribute called border, and then you can specify like that you want the line to be 1 pixel thin, to be solid and not dotted, and then the color to be black. So how that looks on the page is I apply it to the long quote. You see how it's 1 pixel thin? You can't really see whether it's 1 pixel or 2 pixels. Black, and it's a straight line, like it's not dotted. So I think that should be enough for CSS. 20 minutes. I'm just going to skip these ones. For those of you who are interested, you can apply display inline. Okay, so let me cover this one real quick. Down here, when I created these simple home contact products, the way that I marked that up in HTML, I did not create like a p tag followed by like a bunch of space and blah blah blah. It's not like that. That is actually a list of items. Let me show you my HTML markup. So you see, I just have UL and LI, right? For the list of items, home, contact, and products. How did I style it? All that I had to do was for the class navigation. Again, that is a dot. I just tell, hey, display inline. So inline meaning they're all going to be on the same line. And that's how it turned out to be like this down here. All on the same line. Some people that do not know CSS very well, the way that they created this last line here, they probably just create home and then they put space in between it and then just put it in contact. So you see how using CSS with HTML, it allows you to cleanly separate the difference between content and styling. On HTML, you can just worry about the content, and then using CSS, you can style the page according to how you want it to look. So, just like HTML, right? There's like, I think that for CSS, there's even more than HTML, like what's available for you to use. There's just like too many, and I honestly don't know even half of this because again, like I'm not much of a graphic designer myself, and there's just too many. Even the graphic designer, they wouldn't remember all of these. So actually, one advice that I have for you guys when it comes time to do web development or programming is your best friend is not your coworker. Your best friend is going to be Google and your ability to search for relevant information. Okay? So if you don't know how to use Google well now, and you know how to use your friends very well now, learn to practice to search for information. Okay? It's going to become very important for your future career. And not just for programming. I think that the ability to search for information well is going to be pertinent to anything that you do. I mean, say you wanted to go to like the latest hip club that you want to go tonight, I don't know where. I mean, if you don't know where or how to go, I mean, Google's your friend. So learn how to use Google well. Learn how to search for any information well. All right, next, and this is the last part now, so don't fall asleep or wake up. JavaScript. So who here has programmed in JavaScript before? No? Yes? Okay. So JavaScript is a programming language. Okay? Just like how you would program your computer using Java, you can program your web browser using JavaScript. Okay? In reality, you can actually use JavaScript not just for your browser now. You can actually use it to program your computer. But I don't want to confuse you guys for now. Just remember that JavaScript is the de facto language for the browser. If you want the browser to behave a certain way, you would use the JavaScript to make that happen. JavaScript is a mix of procedural and object-oriented. I'm sure you guys know what OO is, but do you guys know what procedural is? No. Procedural is just the stuff that predates or that came before OO. So it's really simple. You construct your program not in terms of classes, like how you would do in Java, right? In Java, you would have a bunch of classes that work together to form an application. Well, in Java, using procedural style, you just have a bunch of functions that work together to make your program happen. So that's what we mean by procedural. Some people say that Java is an object-oriented language in a sense that everything is an object. And this is a lot of the old programmers, they weren't used to object-oriented. That's why they said that, oh man, in Java, whatever you have to do it through OO. JavaScript allows you to have a dynamic interactivity with your web page. Thinking back to Facebook, when you click like, when you add comments, when you view a photo, everything that you do on Facebook page, that when you click on it, it does not refresh the page. That is actually done all via JavaScript. Okay, so just remember that JavaScript is going to become more and more important in the future as we move more towards a highly dynamic website. So how good is JavaScript? Does anyone get the joke here? Just for your reference, the book on the left is probably like the Bible for JavaScript, learning JavaScript. Like it is the reference for JavaScript web developer. I myself never read it because I would never put myself through a book that big. But on the other hand, the book on the right-hand side is a very good book. It contains the good parts of JavaScript. And the punchline here is that this describes JavaScript in its entirety. That this is the good parts. In other words, JavaScript in the beginning, maybe 1997 or 2000, a lot of people made fun of it as a toy language, as not a real programming language, and it was fueled by many bad web developers that created like a really annoying web page using JavaScript. So because of that, JavaScript got a really bad name. Okay, so some people they saw the potential in JavaScript, and then the guy wrote to show the developers that hey, it's not all bad. I mean, there are certainly good parts, and there are really some parts that are really wonderful. I mean, as an experienced web programmer, I can tell you that there are really some cool, interesting aspects to the JavaScript programming language that you won't find in Java, for example. Okay. So the key takeaway from here is that JavaScript is a real programming language. It's not a toy programming language anymore, and it is going to become very important in the future. So know it well. And it's not hard to pick up. I mean, if you look at the syntax, right, it's very similar to Java. Okay? But don't let the syntax deceive you. JavaScript and Java are really two different things. Just like how a ham is to a hamster. Do you get the joke here? If you don't get it, I'll just explain real quick. What is the difference between Java and JavaScript? The difference between Java and JavaScript, even though the prefix is the same, right? Java and JavaScript, but they're actually two different things. A lot of developers think that just because JavaScript has the prefix Java, they thought that it is part of the Java programming language. Maybe it is the scripting language that came to Java, but in reality, that's not true. Okay? Actually, the guy that created the JavaScript programming language, in the beginning, he wanted to name it LiveScript. He wanted to name it LiveScript, and he created this language probably in 1996-97, back when Java was really a hot commodity, like the next big thing, right? Because prior to 1996, a lot of developers use C++. You guys have heard it, C++ programming language, and the C language. But then Java came along, became really popular. So the guy that created this, I think he worked for maybe Sun company. But anyway, the point is, the marketing team decided to capitalize on the popularity of the Java language and then change from LiveScript to be JavaScript. And that is where the similarity ends. That is all the similarity between Java and JavaScript. So just like how you have ham, right? Ham and hamster. They're two different things, but they're prefixed by the same word, ham. So that's the same way with Java and JavaScript. Okay. So at least if you don't remember anything from this lecture in terms of JavaScript, just remember that Java and JavaScript are not the same thing. They are programming languages, but they're totally different. So what can you do with JavaScript? Okay, 5 or 6 minutes. I'm just going to show you like what are some of the things that you can do with JavaScript. So with JavaScript, right? You can code it such that you can have a picture, you can show the pictures, all without refreshing the page. That's the key. Whenever you deal with JavaScript, just remember, you just click on something and something happens. It's just like when you did your Java screen, right? You click on a button, something happens. Same thing with JavaScript. It's a language, a programming language that is behind the web browser. So that's an example of how JavaScript can be used to enhance your web experience. Let me give you another example. Because, I mean, imagine, right? You guys program in Java and you wrote your application to, like, say, Hello World, right? And then you ran it on Windows, it worked. But you ran it on, let's say, like a Linux operating system. It didn't work. That's the problem that web developers have to deal with every day. Particularly, it is the Internet Explorer. So there's one thing I want to share with you is that Internet Explorer is the one web browser that web developers don't like to use the most, because all the modern web browsers are the same. They behave very similar, with the exception of the Internet Explorer. And the funny thing is that Internet Explorer probably has the widest market share in terms of like how many people actually use the browser. So the key takeaway from here is that in web programming, just because you program something does not mean that it will work across multiple browsers. And that's why testing is really important. Okay? 5 more minutes will be able to. So I want to take this one. Oops, it's gone. You can't link it, right? This is another thing you can do with JavaScript. You can actually move the DOM, the position of the DOM dynamically. Again, all I did was I just moved my mouse cursor, and it just moved by itself. I mean, the HTML page gets modified as you actually viewing it. That is the key of JavaScript. It allows you to have that capability. Because prior to the rise of JavaScript, I don't know if you guys were old enough by then, but a lot of the websites back then, maybe 2000, 1996, they were all static pages. Just like pages that I created, like just a bunch of text and some pictures. You couldn't do anything with it. All that you could do was just like follow one link to the next. But now, with the usage of JavaScript, you can actually make your web page interactive, more like a desktop application. So I guess this guy kept his promise, huh? It is really cool. This blew my mind. I don't even remember what I did for this. Oh, you can actually write your JavaScript code in a way that you can actually edit the web page that you're looking at. I'm sure that not a lot of you guys have come across a website that actually allows you to edit the web page you're looking at. But with JavaScript, you can actually tell the browser, hey, this is like, I want to be able to edit the page. And the last one, I just want to show you that with JavaScript you can also follow that. But when you actually develop a real web application, please don't use dialogue. I mean, use something else, okay? I think that from the user experience, it's kind of annoying to like having to see web pop up every time. I mean, imagine using Facebook, and every time like you click on the like button, it asks you like, are you sure you really want to like that? Imagine how annoying that would be, right? So please use this judiciously. Like maybe use it for something that really will like destroy the record, or something that is really that the user does not want to actually want to confirm. So that is pretty much all that I prepared. I mean, I actually have some other stuff, but I think that's all for today. I hope you guys had fun, and if you have any questions, just feel free to email me or add me. Okay, so thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Ajahn Pak. So, well, very valuable stuff and fun stuff. I think this should give you some inspiration in learning more to do something cool, like some of a few examples at the end. Okay, and frankly, JavaScript is going to be a very big thing. It's going to be even more important than what it now is. Okay. Well, let me share something about my experience in writing JavaScript and Java. Basically, well, during my sophomore or junior year here in this school, right? I started learning HTML before I can even write Java. But when, well, back then, like Ajahn Pak said, every pages are static. I would like to add something exciting, some animations, or just something that can move inside an HTML page. But the only option there, well, back then it's HTML 3.0. Back then, JavaScript just at its early age, it's still a bad guy. JavaScript is still a bad guy to present you pop-up to buy something or redirect you to some, well, bad websites, things like that, right? So the only option there is to write Java applets in order to introduce interactivity inside a web browser. So, well, that's why I started learning Java. Okay, but right now the pictures are all changed. JavaScript gonna be bigger, and the reason I mentioned that is because there are, well, if you are into web development, you're gonna must have heard something about the new version of HTML. Anybody knows about the versioning? That number, HTML5. Okay. Well, people said that HTML5 is gonna come. It's gonna come in, well, not next year, but probably 2014. That the groups who kind of right now design HTML5 promise that it's gonna be stable at that time. I doubt that. Okay. And the key components integrated in the HTML5 standards. One of them is, of course, the HTML itself, the CSS version 3. I'm not sure. CSS version 3 and the whole new JavaScript, things like that. Probably not the whole new, but HTML5 gonna bring lots of potential of JavaScript. So people even said that, well, Adobe Flash gonna be dead by that time. It's gonna be replaced with JavaScript and HTML5. So that's how big it is. Okay. So well, let me again thank Ajahn Sipaput. Okay. And well, bad news is that after midterm you're gonna have to be put up with me again for the rest of the term, and probably we might have some slots at the end of the terms, and we'll see about the open topics, which topics we're gonna cover. Okay, so well, that's pretty much it for today. Well, let us give another round of applause to Ajahn. Final one before the midterm exam is that on Courseville, I already upload an example of past exams. You can use that to see the style of the exams that you're going to see on Monday. Okay, and materials covered, the topics covered in this lecture is going to be covered or included in the final exam. Right? We have taped the whole session, and we'll put the tape, the clips on the webpage on the Courseville. You can have a chance to review what we have been covered to prepare for the exams or to prepare yourself for web programming later on. Okay, so good luck with all the subjects you're going to take in your midterm exam. I'll see you guys after the midterm. So, Ajahn Sipaput probably can stick around just for a small, just a short while. But if you have questions, please feel free to email. Is that okay?